Well, good morning, everyone, and a very good early morning, I should say, to Jason Sobel, to Mike McClure, to all of you in the chat. Well, it's 9:01 a.m., Jason, and we thought we were doing this show at 1 o'clock, but the rain and the weather said otherwise. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. It's an early morning, ready to go. I feel like at 1 o'clock, at least we might have had a chance of getting some things right when they were halfway through the round already, but we'll see what we can do at 9.
Mike, you know what's funny? You and I were on CBS Sports HQ yesterday with Tommy Tran, if memory serves. And speaking of getting things right and very wrong, I just have to lead with this, and we're going to get to the leaderboard and outright bets and everything you want to talk about in a second. But we both were touting, especially me, Will Zalatoris to potentially win this thing at 18-1 pre-round 3, to top 10 at plus 110 or plus 120 is what I gave out. And boy, did he look good. And it's just evidence, Mike, of what this course and what this weather can do to a golfer. And I do think that makes things really fruitful today. In a second, we're going to look at the leaderboard. There's crash and burn, stuff going on pretty much everywhere.
Pretty much everywhere. Sia, good morning, everybody. 8:02 a.m. In Central Time here. We're even earlier, but loving it. Look, Will Zalatoris, I tweeted the horse. I love the horse. It's exactly what Will Zalatoris was yesterday. We went from thinking we were live with our 80-1 pre-tournament tickets to now literally clinching on to a top 40 minus 105 ticket that I don't feel great about at all going into this final round. So it was truly an experience of what everything is like out there at the Players right now, but it's also the Will Zalatoris experience. Man, that quad, it's kind of hard to have a quad without hitting it in the water. Yeah. But he figured out a way to do it.
I think the discouraging thing, and Jason, like, it's really easy for me to say on the sidelines, like, how can you do that? I think the discouraging thing for me is when you get a guy like a Will Zalatoris that has a quad and then he follows it up with a double. And then, 2 holes later, it's another double. It just feels, and I'm not saying he checked out by any means, but it's just, he could have had that quad and then, bounce back with a par or a birdie, and it just didn't go that way.
So he said this to an extent at Bay Hill last week, but it's exacerbated this week at CBC Sawgrass, which is, this is what we want. So often fans of the game and bettors out there say, I want carnage. I want these guys to suffer. I want these guys making bogeys. Maybe at the U.S. Open. The fact of the matter is, most fans, you don't want carnage. What you want is these players to be challenged. I want to see good shots rewarded and scores able to be posted out there, but I want to see bad shots and even just slightly askew shots. I want to see them penalized. And that's exactly what's happening right now. This is as volatile a golf course as we will see the entire year. And if you're not on your game for one single shot, like we saw with Zalatoris, the whole thing can just blow up in a hurry.
Yeah, exactly. We've got already some people putting picks in the chat. Here's what I want to do. I want to look at the outright board, and I do want to have the discussion, how far down is too far down, who can post the score early, that type of thing. But there are some 3 balls. Like, for everybody that I'm sure everybody watching kind of knows, the tee times, split tees going off in 3s between 8 and 10:01 a.m. So we actually have a lot of 3 balls, and depending on whatever site you look at, you might have some sort of head-to-head matchups, or what's called the 3-ball matchups available too. Like, Japan is in the chat. He's already given out picks. He says Carson Young over Ben Yan and Isaiah Salinda. Japan also says Tom Kim over McCarthy and Daniel Berger. These are obviously plus numbers. These are 3 balls. We're going to get to some 3 balls that, we may or may not like in a couple of minutes, but we still have some time because we've got Bobby Mack going off in his 3-ball. And Sung Jae Im going off in his 3-ball at 9:06. So that's kind of come and gone. But the next tee time is 9:17. So we have a little bit of time. Mike, I want to start with you. The how far down is too far down scenario, because this show's only going to go, it's probably going to go less than an hour. And so that's when the leaders are going to be, in large part teeing off and the guys in the sort of the T8, T5 position. I look at JJ Spaun, who has been very solid, and his game lends itself to being solid. He's just a solid player, right? He's minus 12. Bud Cauley, birthday boy Bud Cauley, by the way, 35 today, if I read that tweet correctly. He's 11 under. Then you got Lucas Glover, Alex Smalley, and then Connors at 8 under. Go down the board to like the 7 unders, who I personally think are certainly in play here. That takes you to Straka, to Cantlay, to McGreevy, to Jaeger, to Jake Knapp. How far down is too far?
I think the -5s are in play when you look at the talent there. Just obviously Scotty Scheffler being at 5 under, he's certainly in play still. I could get extreme and say Colin Morikawa and Justin Thomas at -4. It would have to get really, really crazy for that to happen. They're going to have absolutely perfect front nines, and then just conditions be as bad as it can be. But yeah, I think that the 7s for sure. Another guy, I think Patrick Cantlay is someone who could sneak up and win this tournament. I think that it's probably down to Scotty Scheffler. The first -5 in at Scotty is probably the realistic range.
Yeah, Jason, I want to. And by the way, Justin Thomas 1 under through 3, so maybe he makes a charge. Jason, when I see, again, credit to JJ Spawn, he's had a good tournament. He's a solid player. He's had a good few weeks too. Bud Cauley, Lucas Glover, Bud Cauley, like on the DFS show, Mike, in the betting show, Jason, we've mentioned these guys, not necessarily this week, admittedly, but these are like Lucas Glover. These are like good players, but they're not Rory McIlroy. They're not Scotty Scheffler. They're not Patrick Cantlay. So Jason, do you expect guys like Spawn at 12 under, Cauley, Glover, Smalley? I think Smalley is kind of live here too with Rory. But the point is, do you expect this leaderboard to flip?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that what we see right now is not going to be what we see at the end of this day. It's so difficult to hold on, not just for one full day, as we saw from Zalatoris and Minwoo Lee and a ton of other guys yesterday, but now to do it for a second day in a row, because it's not going to be much easier out there, if at all. It might even be harder out there this morning with the wind still kicking up and storms coming in. So I do think that the guys at the top are hanging on for dear life right now. If we've learned anything from the Spawns and the Cawleys and the Smalleys out there and Glover, it's that you have to keep your ball in play. Yeah. I mean, the guys who are the big hitters right now, Minwoo Lee smashes it all over the place. The further you hit it, the more it's going offline in these wins, quite frankly. And you've got to be a guy that just plinks it down the fairway. I agree with Mike that I think the 5s are borderline in it. You've got to go low. You've got to probably put up a 65, 66, which I'm not sure is out there in these conditions. The 6s are probably live, but the 2 guys at 6 under, I don't trust a whole lot. What was it? Ryan Gerard
and JT Poston.
Yeah, maybe. But really, it's 7 under or better. And again, just like Mike said, I love Cantlay. I love Straka. Sometimes you look at a field or you look at the leaderboard and you say, I don't really know. As a bettor, I don't know. This has been crazy. If you looked at the leaderboard, if you didn't watch the first 3 days, you looked at the leaderboard, you looked at the odds right now, you'd say, well, Rory McIlroy is going to win this golf tournament. There's nothing about what Rory McIlroy has done over the first 3 days. He had one really good day of putting, one really good day of iron play, one really good day of driving the ball, but hasn't put it all together. Nothing has shown me that he's ready to go out and win this golf tournament. So I think it's pretty wide open. If it's pretty wide open, I'm going to go with the guys with the bigger numbers next to their names. Cantlay and Straka make the most sense to me right now.
The one thing I'll say about Rory is I look at his strokes gain metrics. Round 1, he gained over 4 strokes on approach, which is obviously like with the wind and the greens drying out. And if you're dialed in on approach, it's obviously going to be a better day than most. And in round 3, he gained over 2 strokes on approach. So if he can keep it in the fairway and keep those approach numbers anywhere close to what he did day 1 and day 3, I think he's really interesting. Do we have, before we talk about some matchups and some of your questions in the chat, do we have the live odds board? I wouldn't mind taking a look at where Rory is here. JJ Spawn obviously leading the pack at, let's see, plus 225. Rory plus 600. We're going to revisit this, folks, but I see Straka at 22-1. Jason, I'll ask you first. Connors at 14-1, I think is interesting. Jason, you just talked about it. Guys that are going to keep it in the fairway. Connors was there last Sunday. He wasn't bad. He wasn't particularly good at the API on Sunday, but certainly, solid. I feel like as much as I want to take Alex Smalley because he's been so good, and we talked about him earlier this week on our early Wedge shows, I feel like for me, it would be Connors at 14, Straka at 22, and then I'd consider, I suppose, Rory at 6. It's just not as fun of a number. Jason, what would you consider here?
Yeah, so first of all, remember, no player has made the Players' Championship his first PGA Tour victory since Tim Clark back in 2010. It's usually guys who have been there, done that. And so that alone would eliminate Bud Cauley. It would eliminate Alex Smalley, not saying they can't do it. Just it's going to be a tough situation for them to try to win for the first time in these kind of conditions. And then I just go to who do I have the most confidence in? Who do I think can keep the ball in play the most? Connors is absolutely on that list.
Yeah.
And like I said, Cantley and Straka are both there. And once again, see, for me, it's one of these days where I don't really have confidence in the top of the board. So I'm just trying to pick a number and see if that number somehow hits. JJ Spawn, remember 2 months ago, JJ Spawn was in contention, shoulda, coulda, woulda at the Sony Open on the back nine. I love JJ. I don't know him that well. Every time I've interviewed him, he's just a soft-spoken, humble, good dude. He's the kind of guy that you talk to and you're like, man, I want to be friends with that guy. He looks really, really nervous when he gets into these back nine in contention situations. I know he's played great. I know he's done a better job of keeping the ball in play, and the putter's been very good. Done a better job than anybody else so far through 54 holes. I am very interested to see what the nerves look like, especially on the back nine, if he is still in contention. Bud Cauley, look, he's been playing really well. You said it. He's been peeling off top 40 tickets just about every week, but there's a big difference between top 40 and trying to win your hometown tournament that you've been going to since you were a kid. And his dad, Bill, was taking him here when he was, as a preteen. So I don't know that, Bud Cauley's going to step up and win for the first time here. And again, Rory's spraying it all over the place. He's hit 4 fairways on Thursday, 5 fairways yesterday. Lucas Glover's interesting to me, but it was a lot of smoke and mirrors yesterday. Hold out 3 times from off the green. Again, you just got to work your way down the list. And the process of elimination gets me to the Connors, Cantley, Straka, even Akshay. I don't mind, but that's the range for me right now.
Mike, Doug Craig says, let's go Straka, Smalley, and Walker. If I could pick 3, I mean, we're having fun here, right? But we're also trying to find some good bets. It would probably be, I liked the Connors number. Nobody's really talking about Akshay, and he had a good first couple of days. I think he's at least interesting. And then I'd probably go down the board to Straka. What jumps out to you, Mike McClure?
I'm extremely biased on it because I am rooting in Smalley at 175 to 1. And I also have Patrick Cantley 40 to 1. And Cantley's the guy that, like, the more I'm watching everything, I feel like I've been thinking we're going to be sweating and celebrating an Alex Smalley or Will Zalatoris ticket. And I think Patrick Cantley is going to sneak up and win this tournament. Looking back through everything I've seen here, he's had 3 really consistent rounds of golf around this place. And I think that he's someone that can play well in these conditions. I like Cantley. He's the first click I would make. And then, like Jason and you, I think that guys like Sepp Straka, Corey Connors are guys that I would be looking to buy here. At the price point. Like, it's not going to shock me if Rory goes out and wins this golf tournament, but I'm not paying that price in these conditions. I think the real interesting next question, which may be where you're going, what do we think the winning score is? Do we get to 1400? Yeah. I don't think so. I think the winning score is 12. I think the winning score of this golf tournament could be 12.
I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah.
So it's, one thing, we'll get into some bets here, but just looking at posted round scores that you can bet over under on. I mean, we're looking at the leaders, Spawn and Cauley. We're sitting at 74.5. So like their baseline number here is sitting 2 over par right now.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I am looking in a second. I'm going to go through some matchups that we can consider, but I do want to get to some chat stuff before we get there, because I want to make sure I don't miss anything here. Let's see. What is the play today? That's a good question, Anthony. We're talking about it. Let's see. Corey Connors over Smalley and McElroy at plus 190. Japan's just giving out all the 3 balls here. Glover's playing so well, says Jeff Stenberg this week. Oh, geez. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of that comment. Who do you like better for a top 10? Okay, by the way, Patrick Cantley, Mike, to your point, consistency. Like, by the way, lately, every time Patrick Cantley has been like, oh, like it feels like Patrick Cantley's back, he has that round where it's like, oh, okay, actually he's not back. But I will say this. He gained across the board in round 3. He gained across the board in round 2, other than losing. He was a small loser, if memory serves, around the green. And he gained across the board in round 1. I mean, if you're looking for that type of you are looking for that type of consistency in a round 4 where you're going to get like the wind and the issues and the course drying out. Cantley makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to be disappointed by him again, so it's not going to be for me. With that said, Gippers Picks wants to know who do you like better for a top 10, Cantley or Straka? Mike, I'm just going to start with you because it sounds like to me, even though I'm sure you like Straka, Cantley would probably be the play.
Let
It's
me
minus
see.
125 and minus 120, it looks like.
Yeah, it was just a slight lean Cantlay, but both I think are appropriately priced. Yeah, I like them both.
Jason?
Yeah. I'd go. I think the higher upside is Cantlay. I think I'd play Cantlay's ceiling, but Straka's floor. I think Straka's got a better chance of keeping it in play. I can see Cantlay going backwards here too. I mean, I like him for an outright right now, and I think he can win this golf tournament. I could also see him shooting 77 today, and we never mentioned his name the entire afternoon. I think Straka's done a really good job of fairways and greens type of golf, not just this week, but throughout the first 2.5 months of the season. I'd rather play his floor for a top 10 right now.
You know, Jason, do we need to start? I think the golf community, in terms of like the betting community and even just the people who cover the sport, there's a question here about Max McGreevy, or it's actually a comment from RD. It says McGreevy leads the field in strokes gained, tee to green, sitting at 7 under. I mean, I think he's an interesting play from like maybe some matchups, or which we'll get to in a second. But do we need to start turning the page on some of these golfers? This is kind of just a editorial from me. Some of these golfers that we have perceived throughout the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years on the PGA Tour is like, hey, this is not necessarily the Scotty Schefflers of the world, but it's the next sort of tier down. And I'm thinking of Jordan Spieth. Maybe we're not thinking he's the next tier down, but guys, there are some big names like Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler that have just pervaded the sport for so long, and they're such good players. But lately, at least this year, I'm seeing a lot of Max McGreevy. I'm seeing a lot of JJ Spawn. Bud Cauley, to your point, is popping up. Lucas Glover, an oldie but a goodie, is popping up. Like, I feel like just from a philosophical standpoint, when we're breaking down these tournaments, and we're talking the Valspar next week, and then we'll be at the Masters in a few weeks. Masters may be a different story, but do we need to turn the page on some of these golfers and start appreciating the fact that names that don't sound as cool, like Max McGreevy and Bud Cauley, maybe these guys are guys we need to consider week to week?
If we've learned anything, not just this year, but over the last 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years, it's that these kids are coming out so well seasoned that they're ready to go out there and win PGA Tour events as soon as they get to the highest level. If we talk Valspar at the end of the show, there's going to be a name I mentioned that doesn't get paid right now. He might get paid NIL, and he might get paid through some other means, but he's not getting paid to play in PGA Tour events, and yet might be my favorite play on the board for the Valspar next week. And so I'm sure people can understand who that might be. That said, these kids are, from the time they're 10, 12, 14 years old, essentially unpaid professional golfers. And they're traveling around the world. They're playing in big events. They're playing against the best of the best, not just kids where, 20, 30 years ago, if you were a really good golfer, Tiger Woods was playing against other kids in Southern California. And he's like, well, I think I'm pretty good. Yeah, maybe a couple times a year you show off your best stuff against the best of the best. But these kids are traveling around everywhere. They've got a TrackMan in one hand. They've got a coach over their shoulder. They are mini professional golfers. And so when you get to the PGA Tour, it's not a culture shock. It's not something that you can't handle. It's just go out there and play your best golf. And from guys like Joe Highsmith to, I know Brian Campbell's been out there for a little while now, but we shouldn't be surprised at anybody who wins at the highest level these days, because quite frankly, they're all potential winners out there. And Max McGreevy in particular, he's a guy that I targeted before the year. Already had a stint on the PGA Tour, went back down to the minor leagues, played the Corn Ferry circuit, got his came back up, and I think he's going to stay here for a while. I think he's a really good player. He's an Oklahoma State kid. I believe, I kind of put him in the same mold as an Austin Eckroat, which is, these guys just keep coming. It's really good college players. You want to know who the best of the best are going to be 5 years from now and maybe sooner? Go look at the All-America list from the last couple of years, and those are the kids that are going to be winning tournaments on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, another kind of no name that I know has been the subject of a lot of conversation on the DFS and betting show and in my round matchups, Jacob Bridgman. I'm not trying to be disrespectful with the no name, but Jacob Bridgman's had like 3-4 great tournaments in a row on hard courses, on easy courses. And then you got the Jordan Spieths of the world, and I'm sure he'll make his comeback, but started the round, bogey, 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 double bogey. He's +5 through 5, it looks like. So, I mean, I feel like we need to start appreciating some of these, quote, lesser names that are having a very consistent impact. All right, let's get back to some betting. Let me go through some three balls, guys. And just if anything jumps out at you, Mike, I know with three balls, you tend to stay away from those because the hold is usually a little bit too severe for the math to check out on them. With that said, we got Patrick Cantlay going out in 7 minutes with Sepp Straka and Max McGreevy. Like, I don't want to touch this. It's plus 140 both ways for Patrick and Sepp Straka. Max McGreevy is plus 260. This one would be a stay away. Any lean, any direction?
It would definitely be a stay away for me, but I do, because I like Straka and Cantlay quite a bit. But yeah, I think that honestly, more so than if you're bullish on any particular player today, more so than any other round, this is one that I would consider just simply betting a round score. Just because, you know, even Cantlay, who's someone I like a lot, his is sitting at 72.5. If he can shoot an even par, that's your over under. Some of these other guys at 1, 2, and 3 over. I think that if you're really bullish on them and wanted them in a three ball like that with that kind of variance, you're better off betting them at a similar price point on a round score.
All right, we got a comment. Did Berger just withdraw from Mark Thomas? I didn't see that. And I'm looking around. I don't see anything like that. Jason, anything?
No, I got an alert because I have him in some FanDuel lineups. Daniel Berger is out. I think that means, and FanDuel does some weird stuff with the alerts. I think that means he's not playing the Valspar
next week. Yeah, they do that sometimes. Yeah. Okay.
Out of the
that can be really confusing. So
yeah, that's exactly what I was just looking up to. By the way, little update: Jordan Spieth has started bogey, double par. He's 5 over through 5.
Yeah. Jordan not having the best of it. It looks like, speaking of the best of it, it looks like this rain might be coming a little bit earlier than people expect. Jason, do you think this one continues, pours over to Monday?
So it's never a good sign when the PGA Tour puts out the official weather report and they have a Monday forecast listed, which they had on today's. I am not completely confident. I got myself into trouble trying to predict some weather last week at the API, so I'm going to take the week off from weather predicting. But look, based on what's coming in, a T-storm's likely at 3 o'clock. That's right around the time that these guys are going to be on 16, 17, 18. Hate to come back to finish this thing off on Monday morning, but we'll see what happens. If there's lightning in the area, they can't play. I mean, it's not a matter of like if it's just raining, yeah, sure, we're gonna keep them out there. We're gonna get this thing done on Sunday. If there's lightning, bolting out of the sky all over the place at 3 o'clock and they're on 17, they're gonna pull them off the course. They have to.
Yeah. Let's go through a few more three balls that are starting within the next, 20 minutes or so. Jason, if any of these three, I'm going to read 3 off. And honestly, I didn't like any of these 3, but we're going to go down the list. Maybe we'll end up liking one. Siwoo Kim plus 105, CT Pan plus 215, Charlie Hoffman plus 220. Let me just do one more. Akshay Bhatia plus 125, Jaeger plus 170, Danny Walker plus 245. Do you like anybody in those 6?
Staying with my theme, Sia, that you've got to keep it in play. I know Charlie Hoffman has made a name for himself as a good win player, but I kind of like CT Pan in that matchup at pretty good plus money there. Siwoo's going to be all over the place. Siwoo, take the over on whatever Siwoo's number is for a single round score because he's going to blow up, I think. And then, like I said, Hoffman's a good win player. I have more confidence that CT Pan is just going to plink it down the fairway all day and keep himself in play.
Yeah. And by the way, Josh is telling me that the rain is going to come certainly sooner, whether it's lightning and things of that nature. I guess is an open question, but it does look like we're going to not complete the round before there's some sort of delay, and that delay could be the rest of the day. But again, that's me speculating kind of off third-hand information. Mike McClure, Xander Schauffele plus 110, Kitayama plus 205, Rico Hoey plus 220, and then Jonathan Vegas plus 140, Cameron Young plus 160, Trey Mullinax plus 225. I don't like any of those either.
Yeah, I'm not getting involved there. Like in normal conditions, it'd be fine betting on Xander's talent, but he's so far out of it. The conditions are awful. Yeah, I would not touch. I would not touch that.
I'm okay going with Vegas. Like I feel more confident he keeps it in play than Cam Young or Mullinax. I don't mind Vegas in that matchup if someone really wants to take a shot there. By the way, yesterday I loved on the telecast yesterday. They go, let's go to Cameron Young at 2 over and see what. And you're thinking this is one of those where like, he's 2 over. This shot either goes in or it goes 2 inches from the hole. And Cam Young hit it 30 yards left into the water. And Kisner just goes, well, that didn't have a chance. I mean, it just summarizes Cam Young over the last 2.5 months, if not longer.
I was pleasantly surprised Cam Young made the cut, if I'm being honest. I'm not even trying to be disrespectful. I just it feels so off for him that I was like, all right, this is a tough course. Cam Young came to play. And then, things happen. Okay, 2 more 3 balls. The last 2 groups going out at 9:50. I think those are the last 2 groups going out. Yeah. Rory McIlroy at -110 versus Corey Connors at +185 and Alex Smalley +310. Those are interesting numbers. This is the one I actually kind of like. Lucas Glover +125, JJ Spawn +185, Bud Cauley +215. I understand JJ Spawn is playing with the lead, but I just think he's been a little bit more. I think he has the ability to be a little bit more consistent, especially from what I saw from Lucas Glover the last day or so. I think +185 in that 3 ball is actually kind of decent. But again, Jason, I know what you said about JJ Spawn in contention. It could be very touch and go for his nerves. Any thoughts on those 2 3 balls?
I feel like if we're able to finish this round, and look, I mentioned before, JJ Spawn's a great guy. Lucas Glover is a fantastic dude. It would be awesome. Win one for the old guys if Lucas Glover can go out there and do it. By the way, he is low PGA Tour radio host so far this week as well. The rest of us not quite in the mix there. So that was a good bet if you had him there. I feel like if we're able to get this full round in, and I hate to say it, but this is going to be one of those days where they're already doing interviews with the winner when the final threesome is still on 17, trying to get their way in the house. It just feels like, those guys, bring the flag sticks in on your way in because you're not getting anything else when you get off the course. So could be wrong.
Mike, do you like any of those 3 balls? And then I have a follow-up question for you relating to the weather, actually.
Honestly, I would play Smalley at +310. I know it's never fun in these conditions, betting on someone who's never won, playing against Rory McIlroy. Rory's far enough back that he's going to still be pretty aggressive which could turn into a disaster. As Jason said earlier, the further you hit it in these conditions, the easier it is to get off track. But Smalley, I think we have to adjust. Look, he's been phenomenal again, tee to green. And if you looked over the last 24 rounds heading into this field, he was 6th in this field in total strokes gained.
Yeah.
And just continues to do it. So the fact that he's, sitting where he is and Rory is 1 stroke behind him, just in terms of passing him on the leaderboard itself. I know this is a scoring on just today's round, but I just think he's in a little bit of a better position than the price point at +310 reflects.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason. Yeah.
As the guy that had Colin Morikawa pre-tournament and loved him this week, he's now 2 under through 4 holes today. He is 6 under overall. I cannot wait for Colin Morikawa to finish tied for 6th place and just be like, what? Just do something on Saturday, and we're right there. And it's absolutely going to kill us.
Yeah. By the way, Alex Smalley, I do want to rep out the early wedge, which is 5 days a week, including the DFS show at 7:00, which Mike McClure, you're on that one. The betting show, which Jason Sobel is on Tuesday at 7:00. That's every single week. That's 2 of our 5 shows. But listen, I gave out some good plays and bad plays on the DFS show. Like I gave out, just like everybody else, Michael Kim. I gave out Doug Gim, who missed the cut. But I did also mention some pivots. I mentioned Akshay Bhatia as a pivot, but I also mentioned Alex Smalley. Mike, you probably did as well. We mentioned Alex Smalley on that show as a pivot off of Doug Gim. I have Alex Smalley in a 6 for 6, but you know who else is in that 6 for 6? Ricky Fowler. And he did not do me any favors yesterday going 10 over par. Quick follow-up, Mike. The weather. If we think this round is going to be cut off early, do we even worry about the conventional wisdom would be, hey, the conditions are going to get worse. Somebody can kind of post a number early. But if we think weather is coming early, well, then JJ Spawn and some of those guys in the lead might be able to finish their round tomorrow in slightly better conditions. Any thoughts there?
I think we would need, and I admittedly am not all in on the weather right now. My normal weatherman, Jason Sobel, has not provided the accurate info for me yet. But no, the thing is if something like that were to really happen, we'd need to be stopping play in like the next 90 minutes. And if that happens, then I think that, I think you're talking about just drastic, because if they stop play pretty soon, it might be done for the day. And if that happens, you need to check your house rules on where you're betting on some of these. If, the matchup itself hasn't started or has started. But I think that if you think that's a possibility, I would lean more heavily into the elite talent in some of those matchups, knowing that they might have, significantly better conditions and more holes to play in those conditions.
Yeah, very interesting setup at the moment. So here's what we're going to do. If you still have questions about live betting and matchups or live outrights, put them in the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We're going to discuss just very briefly Valspar, maybe some of the players you all are looking at early, because frankly, those numbers should be out probably not tonight for the Valspar, but hopefully tomorrow morning. I guess that could depend on how this tournament finishes, but maybe people want to get an early number before it gets bet down on a couple of guys that you guys like for the Valspar. We'll talk about the course just a little bit, but then once we're done with that, we're going to circle back to what's going on the course at the players and just consider, hey, who's making a charge, who isn't, maybe some live outrights to consider before we get everybody out of here. So we're going to hit the Valspar next just for a few minutes. We'll circle back to the players. It'll all happen right after this message from our partners. Oh, Masters. Don't forget about the Masters. This April, CBS Sports brings you more of the Masters than ever before. 14 hours of live coverage from Augusta National on Saturday and Sunday, beginning each day at noon Eastern on Paramount Plus and continuing at 2 on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus. All right. Okay, I thought we were going full ad break there, but no, that was just me doing a read on the Masters, which I'm sure everybody is very excited about, just a couple of weeks away on that. All right. Let's look ahead to next week. Let's look ahead to the Valspar. Obviously, Jason, the field isn't going to be quite as good as this field, right? We're going to have some guys kind of taking some time off over the next couple of weeks leading into the Masters, but we do have some names that I think are bettable. So maybe right off the bat. So let's talk about maybe what you're looking for at the Valspar, and maybe a couple of names that you already have your eyes on.
Yeah, so first of all, for those who haven't looked at the field yet, and I've been looking for at least 20 minutes now, Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, some of the bigger names there. I'm sure I'm missing a few here, but yeah, the field's not bad. I think it was like 25 of the OWGR top 50, right around there. So field isn't terrible. I'm looking for, despite what we saw last year, I think last year is a complete outlier as far as the winner is concerned. Peter Malnati hits at 250 and crooked, which doesn't usually get it done on the PGA Tour, and especially on that golf course. That was the Brian Campbell of last year. And for those that weren't watching the Valspar a year ago, it was just like Campbell going to a driver-heavy golf course, being the shortest guy on the PGA Tour and somehow beating the longest guy on the PGA Tour in a playoff. Made no sense, any of it. Malnati, sort of the same thing at the Valspar last year. I'm going back to what we've learned over the years at Innisbrook, which is I want some big, brawny, long-hitting ball strikers. And so I may start the card, and Mike and I alluded to it earlier, with the amateur, Luke Clanton. He's got his PGA Tour card locked up already. He's a Florida kid, plays better on these Florida golf courses that he knows pretty well. I'm waiting to see the number. I'm very anxious to see what the number is with a still rusty Xander and a kind of coming back JT. And, I just don't know if we get 35 or 40, Mike. I really like Clanton. If it's 25, I'm kind of hemming and hawing a little bit, but I'll be very interested to see what that number is. Nikolai Højgaard's a name I threw out on the Tuesday early wedge show. He missed the cut, but he's top 5 in strokes gained total so far this year. The other guys we've seen up there, it's Morikawa, who's okay, not going to win this, but at least playing pretty well. Rory McIlroy, who's right there. Alex Smalley, who a lot of people didn't know much about coming into this week, but he is 3rd strokes gained total, and Scotty Scheffler. So it's the guys who are playing really well, including this week. And Nikolai Højgaard's next on that list, so I expect him to pop at some point here. And I also like the guys that are not playing this weekend. I like the guys that missed the cut and aren't having to deal with all this crap at Ponte Vedra Beach right now.
Yeah.
The guys who have been playing well throughout the year, Michael Kim and Andrew Novak, the guys who probably aren't happy about having the weekend off, but the more and more this weather comes in, the more they see the wind, the more they're going to sit on the couch and go, you know what? I feel pretty good about next week instead.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Mike, when we're looking at previous winners here, Jason Sobel mentioned Peter Malnati, which does feel like a bit of an outlier. Taylor Moore in 2023, I mean, I got to be honest, Taylor Moore's had a very good players. I think he's an interesting call for next week as well, and I snuck him into the one showdown lineup I had for round 4, so we'll see how that goes. The prior 2 years, Sam Burns, that 2022 and 2021, COVID year in 2020. And then 2019, it was Liv's Paul Casey. Xander Schauffele, Jason, you mentioned, looks like Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Victor Hovland, Will Zalatoris, looks like they're playing here. But Mike, your guy, he mentioned it, Luke Clanton also playing here. You have your eyes on him again?
Yeah, I'll definitely be playing some Luke Clanton, just anticipating playing him at least, depending on where the number comes in. I think it'll be pretty friendly overall because, as you guys mentioned, the field is actually quite strong. You're going to have JT and Xander in there. Zalatoris will be back in this one. Tommy Fleetwood's still in the field, Sepp Straka. So there's a good number of guys that are going to eat up that top 7, 8 on that odds board. So I think that we're going to get a good number on Clanton. I will probably like Sepp Straka, Tommy Fleetwood again. I will almost definitely be going back to Michael Kim. I'm fascinated to see where he comes in on his, not just his outright number, but his pricing in DFS. I think that Michael Kim is someone we'll be right back to. Other guys, we got the Berger withdrawing. I did kind of like the setup a little bit for Berger, so that's not super fun that he is withdrawn from that. Victor Hovland is in this field, not going to play Vic right now. I hope it gets better for him soon, but not going to play him. Yeah, the strength of the field looks pretty good though. So I think that Connors is in the field as well,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're going to get our good number on Clanton. I think it'll be at least 30-1.
Yeah.
All right.
I can get down with that.
We like Clanton. I'm just going to throw out Taylor Moore because I think it'll be a long number and I think he's playing well. Do we want to throw out any other name? I know we got Clanton, Jason Sobel. Maybe Connors was thrown out there. Jason, anybody else?
I'm just going to keep fanboying. And at this point, I'm so pot committed. I'm going to throw Keith Mitchell out there. He's playing some good golf. He didn't play well again this week, but I like, you look at the stats. Like he's a top 5 driver on the PGA Tour who last year was a top 15, top 20 iron player. I don't know. Like if I putt for him, he's going to win golf tournaments and I'm not a good putter. I don't know. Like it's one of those like statistical anomalies. You put it all together and you're like, how does this guy not have better results? Again, I'm looking at a name that might be 75, 80-1, something like that, and take a chance on him. But Zalatoris could be interesting coming off this week. I'm looking for guys with upside, obviously, in the outright market. Cam Davis could have some interest there. Kurt Kitayama a little bit. Kitayama's number has been way too short for me all year. I keep looking at his results and his performance, and I'm like, is he doing something that I'm missing? Because his number is just short on a weekly basis. And it's a guy that I would probably target if he was, 20 points higher on a weekly basis, but he's just not. And until that number creeps a little longer, he's probably not a guy that I look at, but we'll see what that number gets to. And I don't know. There's not a lot of great options, quite frankly. It's either coming from the top of the board or it's somewhere way down like a Malnati kind of thing, which by the way, I'd love to say if anyone had a Malnati ticket from last year, that might have been less predictable than Brian Campbell.
I actually felt bad for Malnati because I believe it was on 18 in round 2 of the Players where he triple bogeyed. He was -3. I believe he put it in the water to triple bogey the final hole and end up on even instead of -1 and make the cut. So I actually I felt pretty bad for him. Mike, before we transition, I do have to ask you about Keith Mitchell and guys like Kurt Kitayama because Kitayama's number has been short because he's been a model darling. The ball striking has been unbelievable. So the betting community as a whole reps him out. He gets bet down and then his number becomes kind of laughably short, especially when you juxtapose that with his actual finishes. I got to say, I'm not betting Keith Mitchell, but it's not like it's been that bad. He kind of is a punchline to some degree, but he's gained ball striking, which I think we can anticipate. Not in a huge way, 5 tournaments in a row. But it's not like he's losing that much with the short game. I mean, he's losing, but it's like, a stroke here, a stroke there. Is this the type of tournament where like a Kurt Kitayama or Keith Mitchell could actually break through? Or is this like, hey, we're not dealing with those. I'm not wasting my money on those guys.
I think both can be true. I am not wasting my money investing on them, and they can absolutely break through and win that golf tournament. I think that there are valid reasons to back both of them in both cases. Probably not going to get to either. If I were to get to one, it probably would be Kurt Kitayama. But there's enough that I like in the field that I think is going to be priced pretty appropriately.
Yeah.
That I don't think that I'll end up getting there.
Fair enough. Okay.
Morikawa, another birdie. He is 3 under.
Wow. That is very interesting. And this is a good transition point. Let's go back. That'll wrap up our very, very brief coverage of the Valspar. We'll have more on that on the Monday DFS show on this channel, on the Tuesday betting show on this channel. Of course, this channel being SportsLine. Let's circle back now to the players. Mike, you noticed Morikawa is 3 under now, certainly making a charge. Is anybody else, now that we're doing Jake Knapp is 1 over through 1. It doesn't look like anybody else is making a serious charge. Have you seen anything else, Mike McClure?
Aaron Rai is not gonna, do anything crazy, but he does have 3 birdies on the card, which has him 2 under on the round. He bogeyed the par 5, which is unfortunate for him, but looks good there. Yeah, nothing else crazy standing out, but the Morikawa 3 under through 5 is pretty frustrating if you were backing him. Like I know some of us were, just based off what you saw on that back 9 yesterday.
Just so many missed putts from short range. It was just ugly to watch. I'll throw Tom Hoagie out there. Tom Hoagie, of course, owns a share of the course record. That JT shot the other day. Hoagie can play some good golf in some tough conditions. He's 1 under through 4 right now. Again, much like Morikawa, not going to win, but he can get himself into a nice position on the leaderboard with a good round today.
Straka has started his round. He is even through 1. If we could, Josh, when you get a chance, throw up the current odds. I do want to see what Colin Morikawa's number is at the moment on BetMGM and some of these other guys, whether their numbers have moved. I think we still have, obviously, JJ Spawn, Bud Colley, Rory. Those are going to be the shorter shots. It looks like Rory's number has drifted to plus 650 in some places as opposed to the plus 600 we just saw. But just to be clear, I'm looking at Colin Morikawa. I see plus 1800 in some places. Mike, this is not a bettable number on Colin. He's too far back.
Ask me after the next hole, but don't let the number move based on the result of the hole.
Uh-oh. That's quite the limitation. All right, well, we are going to close the show soon, but I do want to get like another look at these outright. So we've got JJ Spawn at plus 225, Rory McIlroy plus 550. Okay, so this number is between plus 550 and plus 650, depending on where you look. Bud Colley, Lucas Glover, and we got Smalley, and the cast of characters we talked about at the beginning of the show, and Corey Connors and Akshay. Colin now 16-1, Cantlay 18-1, and then Sepp Straka 22. All right, if we had to pick a live outright right now, and it's just one, Jason Sobel, I start with you. Who is it?
I will play the ceiling on Patrick Cantlay. I don't feel great about it, but I really don't feel great about anybody. And so I might as well take the bigger number here and hope that things get wild and chaos reigns. But Mike made a great point before. If indeed this thing doesn't go the distance today, I think it's a great advantage to the guys near the top of the board. If you can come back out on Monday morning in perfect conditions, which it looks like it's going to be, and go out there with like JJ Spawn, a one-shot lead with the back 9 to play, I think that is a much better scenario than trying to play in 30-mile-an-hour winds this morning.
Yeah, it's interesting too, Mike, because somebody made the comment when I made the comment, hey, this could get cut short. It could be to the advantage of the later tee times today. Well, I think the wind's going to be pretty bad tomorrow too. Again, I didn't really look deeply into it, so I don't know like what's better than the other. It does seem like today's wind is going to be worse than tomorrow's. But to me, Mike, before you give out your one outright that you'd at least suggest, and you and I will be on HQ talking about this in about an hour and a half, but don't you have to almost be like watching, like you really have to be paying attention to this tournament and kind of almost like monitoring the weather with the golfers to make the right play? Because I do feel like there's a live outright that can be made in 2 hours time with factoring in the weather and where people are at on the course and who's going to be in the house and whether that matters or not because people are going out tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that you can pick off an outright. It will definitely it will depend on the weather and timing for sure. You're going to have to be able to accurately forecast that if you're really just basing it solely off that. I think you can learn a lot in the next, again, probably 60 minutes now in terms of just where the weather is at, how the course is playing. And ultimately you'll get, an hour from now, you're going to see a guy like Colin. He's going to at least be done with the front 9, probably sitting on 11. I think that you'll have a lot of information at that point. But I admittedly am not so deep into the weather right now on this that I can't tell you with any amount of certainty that I think it's going to, stop in 90 minutes or gonna, anything like that. So
yeah, and I think that's why you have to just like literally be watching it. And maybe there's updates on the coverage. Jason, go ahead.
I wonder how much these FanDuel alerts are going to put everybody on tilt today. We already talked about the Daniel Berger alert that he's out. Aaron Rye is now marked out. Aaron Rye is still playing golf today. He's out next week. I get that it's confusing for people. It's confusing for us too. But yes, he's still playing golf.
I do want to give Hef Sterling a shout out because at 9:17 a.m., this is why you got to be dialed in the chat too. Of course, we did talk about Colin, but he put out Morikawa top 10 at plus 120, which isn't a lock by any means, but it's certainly looking better now than it was at 9:17. We've got Gipper's picks, super sharp capper who's in the SportsLine Discord all the time, breaks down UFC, has been on some of the SportsLine shows. He said, I just played Smalley 3-ball boosted to plus 378. I think without that boost, it was plus 310. We talked about that. That's just too big a number to potentially ignore here. John says, I'm hopping live on Sepp and Cantlay. Let's get it today, fam. I don't hate those two. We talked about those two. Mike, did I corner you to a picking one live outright? I don't think
you haven't really, but it's going to be Cantlay for me if I'm adding to any positions. I do have Cantlay and Alex Smalley pre-tournament that I'm kind of rooting in, and I don't see a ton of opportunity to or a need to go invest anymore really in this board currently. Yeah. If for some reason I had nothing pre-tournament and wanted to go play this afternoon, the three guys that I would consider buying right now would be Patrick Cantlay, Sepp Straka, and Corey Connors.
Yeah. Jason, Corey Connors is starting to call my name a little bit at the number at 14-1. Just because I feel like these conditions, I mean, they cater to a couple of these golfers, but I think 14-1 is the most palatable number for me. I might just this might be just a for fun, like sprinkle on Corey Connors just to have a quote sweat beyond the ones I have. Like the only sweat I have right now from the early wedge, I only picked 3 outrights on the early wedge and it was all in the without market. Sepp Straka is the only guy that could actually win some money for me. Remember in that without market, I had him at pretty low or high at 35-1. So don't have a ton of sweats other than that. Maybe I'll sprinkle on Corey Connors. All right, I think we can probably get out of here, folks, as I look at the coverage. By the way, who was it that you just mentioned? Patrick Cantlay, he parred the first and he's on the par 5 second right now. So certainly if he gets a birdie here, things get pretty interesting for Patrick Cantlay backers. All right, how about a final word before we get out of here? Jason Sobel, maybe it's regarding the Valspar, maybe it's regarding this tournament, maybe it's regarding what you're watching right now.
Final word, I don't have the exact stat on this, but you just mentioned Corey Connors. Last week he was in contention at the API. He did not make a bogey in the final round. He only made 1 birdie. It was something like 32 feet of putts. Like if you count them all up, there's 18 holes. 32 feet and 18 holes means you're tapping in from this far away an awful lot. I love his ball striking. Everyone loves his ball striking. The problem with picking guys who are great ball strikers is you find out they usually don't make any putts. And so you're sitting looking at the app going, oh, man, 6 feet, 4 inches the hole for birdie and then 15 inches for par, and it happens every single time. And so, yes, I like Connors. I think it's the right range. I just worry that if he makes nothing, he's not going to win.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, Scotty Scheffler is even through 3 holes in case you're not watching the coverage and you're just watching us. And if you are just watching us, I do want to remind you, early wedge, 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, live chat Wednesday, recap Friday. And then this show is normally at 1 o'clock on Sunday, but because of the tee time adjustment, we adjusted up to 9 o'clock. Trying to be here for you to start the discussion, maybe start some betting action as well. Mike McClure, final word.
Just all eyes on Colin Morikawa right now. Tee shot on 6 is in the fairway. He's making some noise. He's making things very interesting.
Yeah. T8 on the leaderboard right now. I got to be honest. My final word is I'm looking at this leaderboard. It's really cool. I'm looking at like kind of 2 different spots of coverage. And I'm confounded by the fact that this is the players. It's round 4. And the leaders are JJ Spawn, Bud Colley, Lucas Glover, Alex Smollett. Yeah, I mean, you don't get to a recognizable, like super recognizable name until you get to Corey Connors. Then, of course, you see Rory and then Colin and Cantlay. But I'm just very curious to see what these guys do. And I will say this, the Bud Cauley story, and Jason, I think you could probably speak to this more than I could, is unbelievable. The car accident that he got into, I believe, was in 2019, where it didn't look like maybe he was going to be able to continue his career, or at least not continue his PGA Tour career. And he's been great this year, and he has a chance to like really impact his future in a huge way. Jason, any thoughts on, it's his birthday today too, if you want to play the narrative card, but it is a pretty great story from Bud Cauley, correct?
Bud Cauley was a kid who I believe was part of this 2011 class that included Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas and Daniel Berger and Emiliano Grillo, who, you know, they all kind of came up together and they all played golf around the country with each other as juniors and amateurs and certainly as collegiates. And he was supposed to be, you know, another one of these big time prospects who was going to play some really good golf, be on the tour for a long time. Yeah, I believe it was a 2018 car accident at the Memorial that week. And he was with, if I'm remembering correctly, there was a player from the Columbus Blue Jackets in the car with them as well. And yeah, I mean, this was a near fatal car accident. I mean, it was a serious deal that happened. He was out of golf for 3 years, and for him to battle back and not just start playing, but start playing some really good golf again is pretty impressive. And he's not a guy that hits it a mile. He's not a guy that does anything real special, but keeps it in play as we're seeing this week. And if he goes out and shoots 66 again, this thing's going to be his by maybe 3 or 4 shots.
Yeah, he looks certainly very confident. And this is one of those things where most people don't have an outright ticket. Most people aren't live betting him, but that's okay. You know, root for your outright ticket. Just root for Bud Cauley to like finish in the top 3 or the top 5, because these are actually the stories on the PGA Tour that probably don't get enough light. And, you know, sometimes they get light just by these guys winning. And I think it's important to remember these stories along with some of the other ones with some of the big ticket players. All right. Well, we got big ticket Mike. We got big ticket Jason. We'll see you all later this week to talk about the Valspar. Thanks for joining us. It was a different time. Don't forget, next Sunday, we'll just be here, this same exact show, probably plus Patrick McDonald at 1 o'clock as opposed to 9 o'clock. But we make the adjustment for you, and we appreciate you making the adjustment for us. This is the Early Wedge. On behalf of Josh on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s, Jason Sobel, Mike McClure. We'll see you next time right here on the Early Wedge.